Hola de nuevo.
Hello again. We continue with the Congress programming, and we're going to welcome Adolfo Borrero, the president of the Smart Cities Commission, who's developed his work in the IT technologies and communication. During more than 25 years, he's had different jobs related with this field. He's been working on different initiatives and solutions based on digital technology to build the destinations of the future for everyone. Adolfo, thanks for being with us. And Juan Mora, we also want to thank him for trying to be here and for all the work that he did in organizing this roundtable. And also a special mention to Virginia Jimenez and to the public. You can send us questions through the chat. Adolfo, you have the floor. Thanks very much for the introduction. I wish there was only 25 years, but actually it's 35 years. So I do have quite a bit of experience. Thanks very much to the organization, to the Onte Foundation for the opportunity to moderate this session and my colleagues in the Smart Cities Commission. As we'll see in just a minute, we're going to take a look at this from the perspective of accessibility. And to do that, in the panel, we have the IMATS from Tecnalia, Mr. Torres from Sien Consulting, María Teresa Linaza from VICOMTECH, and Daniel González from Smart Cities. Now, the touristic destinations is an activity that we've developed over the past 6 years through the concept of smart destinations. We were quite sensitive in the Smart Cities Commission and created a working group specific to work on intelligent tourism. And over time, we had a benchmark event which is called Digital Tourism, where we met with the network, the National Intelligent Tourism Network. The concept has continued to evolve, and the next generation funds have been increasing the activity in this intelligent tourist destinations, and accessibility has been a major issue. Thanks to the experiences that we'll hear about on this panel. AMETIC had developed a micro project in the area of intelligent tourism. That was about 4 years ago and was included in the projects that are now appearing on sustainable tourist destinations. And you've probably seen on television and in the press the formation of Benidorm as a destination that's going to latch onto the National Intelligent Tourism Platform. These are projects that we are actively collaborating on. So without further ado, I'm going to go around the panel so each one of you can introduce yourselves. We'll start with Eutene, first of all, Mariano, second, María Teresa, and then Daniel. So just very briefly, Elene, please talk about the activity that you're involved in. I think you have to unmute your microphone, please.
Está muteada. El mute. Eukene. Eukene, estás en mute.
Perdonadme.
Sorry about that. First of all, I apologize because my throat is a little sore, and I hope that I can last through this session. My name is Eugene. I'm a researcher in Tecnalia. For those that don't know that, Tecnalia is a private research institute, works in many different areas. I've been working for 10 years in the health division, specifically in the Department of Neuroengineering. I work on research in neuroprostheses or electrostimulation for different pathologies. And recently, I've been working on sensorial electrostimulation. And I've also been working on other types of medical fields, artificial intelligence applied to machine learning using these devices. Very technical. Mariano? I'm the director of sales consulting, and we work with tourist destinations for sustainable digitization, and we work in three major levels: diagnosis and study through the situation of the destination, planning to put the focus on the path to follow for that destination, for sustainability, and thirdly, we work on accompaniment. So these funds, need this, these people receiving these funds need this accompaniment to manage the projects that are being funded. Thanks, Mariano. Maria? Hello, good afternoon. My name is Maria Teresa Linaza. I work in VICOMTECH. This is a applied research center in the Basque Country. And we're working on artificial intelligence technologies and interaction and computer graphics. We began with accessibility. We were always interested in accessibility, I should say, and we've worked in different projects that we'll talk about to try to help people with functional diversity to satisfy certain aspects of their lives. One being this automatic subtitles, and we'll talk about that later on. Thank you, Maria. Daniel? Yes, thanks very much, Adolfo. And thanks to the organizers to give us the opportunity to be here. As you said, I work in the Smart Cities cluster, the business group that represents the offer of the smart city sector in Spain. We're in charge of trying to actively reduce the distance separating the different developers of intelligent cities and their implementers. This could be municipalities, regions, or tourist destinations, who are the receptors of these solutions. And I work basically in promoting projects thanks to the assistance of the cluster and solving problems. Now, our solutions usually have a technological part, but we always ensure that these come from an analysis and strategy that makes sense. And one of the dimensions that is essential for this smart cities is bearing in mind accessibility, of course. And that's why we actively collaborate with the ONCE Foundation when we launch this intelligent or smart development.
Te vas a comer el tiempo luego de tu intervención. Como sigas por este camino. Muchas gracias.
Thanks very much.
Por favor, entonces ahora vamos a tener una ronda.
Now we're going to do an 8-minute round. Please be strict with the time. So 8 minutes each, please. As I mentioned, our work is very technical, and in Tecnalia, we develop technology that allows us to focus on health, or in this case, accessibility, so that we can provide solutions in making tourism more accessible. Today, we don't have any project related to accessible tourism per se, but we are working on several projects working on the sensorial perception. We're working in different fields, and we're applying electrical stimuli using electrodes in any part of the body through a small simulation. With this, we can transmit information, codified information in form of electrical stimuli. And this, we can use different codes and communicate information, instructions, and so forth. We've been testing this in entertainment, video games, also in training for simulations in people who have lost their forearm and hand, for example. To give this electrotactile feeling to these people. The idea is, this can be applied in different areas, but the idea is tourism. We can generate extended reality ecosystems and provide characteristics of any objects, landscapes, works of art, and so forth. And what we can do is codify the information, this visual or acoustic information, and transmit this through tactile impulses. To give you an idea, we can develop applications that we can transmit information in a static way. We can do it virtually as well. A virtual tour through a museum or landscapes or a work of art. We can code using parameters like frequency of this stimulation, the intensity of this stimulation, and the location of this stimulation. We can be very precise with technology called a multi-field electrodes to generate spatial simulation to generate forms. For example, we can let's transmit information about what we're looking at or what's on the screen of a computer. In this case, this can be applied to any object of tourist interest. And it's not only for static things, it can also be used to transmit dynamic sensations. For example, we could be in a be looking at a landscape as we're moving along, and you can transmit the movement in a dynamic way with stimulation, spatial stimulation, using different parameters, time and space parameters, to codify all of that information. So it's a technology that we've been working on because it does have many applications. So really, the applications go as far as the imagination of the researcher goes. For example, this application can be used as a guide in cities. If there's a difficulty in reading maps, for example, if a person has difficulty, well, they can use this type of guide. Usually people use acoustic signals for a guide that takes you around the city or a museum, but that's kind of an invasive technology because what happens, it does not allow us to perceive other types of stimuli through hearing. In this case, then, you'd be wearing a glove, and all the guiding instructions would come codified with these impulses in the glove to guide a person very discreetly. And the studies that we've done with people, amputees, it's very intuitive. And the feedback we've received is that It's a very intuitive sensation that they receive, and this could be another application in tourism. So they're the main applications that we see in tourism. There could be many, many more because this is a very broad topic, but here we just wanted to underscore the potential today that these technologies have. These wearables, for example, for all of these types of applications to tourism in this very broad world. So that's what we wanted to communicate to everyone. As you can see, it is quite technical. It's a little bit outside of infrastructures um, that maybe are discussed here, but there could be some people interested in working with us, and there are many possible applications of this technology in tourism and the extended reality. Yes, I think it could have a great impact on the quality of life of many people. Very, very interesting. Thank you. Let's move on to Mariano Torre. To talk a little bit about smart cities. It's one of the most important companies in intelligent tourist destinations. How do you see accessibility, Mariano, and the development that you're doing in your company? Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to form part of AMETIC and this commission to transform tourist destinations, to make them more, make them smarter, and to make cities smarter. Now, in terms of accessibility and IT, this is the way to guarantee that any visitor can enjoy services, products and services and experiences in a simple and comfortable manner without any obstacles. In other words, accessibility is something that should be reflected in the whole value chain of tourism, from the presence of resources of a destination or the training of the technical personnel, the implementation of improvements in accessibility to tourist information, or the tools themselves, like a web page, tourist applications, etc. Specifically in IT and the trends in the behaviors of visitors, especially after the pandemic that we're still in, destinations need technological tools that can provide services so that people can interact in a simple way and that adapt to the characteristics and needs of each visitor. And belonging to bodies like ITE or the municipalities in Valencia has allowed these destinations to share their experiences and success cases, generating possibilities to extrapolate these actions to other tourist destinations. We, in our consulting company, uh, a lot of our work in diagnosis and master plans of intelligent tourist destinations show that the majority of destinations are aware that they need to improve their accessibility. In regional, and national level, accessibility is incorporated as a priority element in their policies. In the framework of Valencia, like the Tourism Act, this is part, accessibility is a part of that. And in our strategic plan as well, these are two pillars where accessibility is of a major importance, but things can improve. There's still a lack of a budget for accessibility. So IT as his plan is to foster private-public collaboration and to use public-private collaboration basically is to coordinate with other departments to implement improvements in the destinations in an inclusive fashion. For example, the IT department can improve accessibility of web pages. Urban planning can improve remove impediments on the street. So each area of the municipality can have an impact with its actions, have an impact on the accessibility of visitors with special needs. I should also mention that the transformation of making a destination more accessible, you don't need a huge budget to do it. There are improving access to web pages, for example, or adapting tourist information in different formats. That doesn't have a large economic cost. And all of these actions of the City Council has to look at all these accessibility criteria. We have had the opportunity to collaborate with Ilunion. It's a company of the ANSE group that has given us very satisfactory results. Right now, we're trying to certify municipalities using the standard of intelligent tourist destination. Now, this is a huge task because in the 5 years that we've been working on this, only one municipality, Benidorm, has been able to certify itself under this standard. So we have the visit of the consultants to do the audit, and to reach that point, one of the most complex processes was making the destination accessible. It still had a lot to do in this field. And so making transportation accessible is one of the biggest issues. So the first step that we did in our consulting firm was recommend to the destination that they bring in experts for this initial diagnosis, which is key in looking at the three major stages of turning destinations into intelligent destinations or smart destinations. They need to know the situation of the destination from the perspective of accessibility. That was absolutely vital. And to know the next steps that the destination needs to take, because we need to understand that accessibility is infinite. It never finishes because technology is infinite. Maybe tomorrow we could have moving sidewalks that allow tourists with disabilities to go around the entire city. So anything could be possible. So accessibility is really infinite. The possibilities are infinite. So it's just a matter of constantly improving destinations and improving accessibility and having a diagnosis that moves on then to the second step. The first step doesn't require a huge investment in urban planning. In almost all the municipalities, what we've done, the first step is really awareness raising, not just of the business sector, but awareness raising of the public administration itself. There are things in the law, but there's a lot of room for improvement. There's just simply a lack of awareness that things are not implemented due to a lack of awareness. So after this diagnosis, then we have these awareness raising and training sessions in public and private sector, and web pages, as I mentioned, there are small things that don't require a great investment. But now the sustainability plans And Altea has also participated in, with 4 million euros, one of the main actions was making some of their most important streets accessible to pedestrians. So this is just an overview now, very quick overview of the context that our consulting firm is working in to make smart tourist destinations, and how we see this as a very logical process of accessibility.
Mariano, pues muchísimas gracias.
Thanks very much.
Agradecendo la sensibilidad de ese Fitur, precisamente, ¿no?
This
Su diagnóstico
diagnosis, bearing in mind
que me consta, ¿no? Que tiene
accessibility is really interesting. This awareness in the planning
a las administraciones locales
of the
para
administrations
la
to bear in mind
en cuanto a la
technology
accesibilidad.
in terms of
En ese
accessibility.
sentido, Mariate, me gustaría
So I think
que
Maria
contara
now,
la opinión
I'd like to hear
VICOMTECH,
the vision
respecto de esos
of
proyectos,
IncoTech,
que me consta, ¿no? Que estáis
because I know that
muy
you're also
sensibilizados con ella.
very
Así que,
aware
por
of
favor,
this.
tuya la
So
palabra.
you have the floor.
Gracias, Adolfo. Pues
Thank
sí, la
you,
verdad es que
Adolfo.
sí.
Yes, the fact
Nosotros,
is
como
that
he
we do.
dicho desde un
As
primer
you said,
momento, pues el tema de la accesibilidad sí que ha sido un tema
in
importante
accessibility has been an important
para nuestro
issue
centro, ¿no?
for our center.
Y bueno, pues ¿qué hacemos en
Now, what do we
accesibilidad?
do in
Parte
accessibility?
turística y en parte no,
In
porque al
tourism, in
final,
part,
bueno, lo que se aplica en turismo puede aplicarse también en
because what
otros,
can be
en
applied to
otras
tourism
áreas
can be
de la
applied
vida
to other
y
aspects of
viceversa,
life
¿no?
as well, and vice versa.
Algo por lo que se ha caracterizado VICOMTECH es el desarrollo de
We
tecnologías de
develop
lenguaje.
language
Sobre todo
technologies
utilizar la voz
and using
como una
voice
interfaz
as an
de comunicación.
interface.
Una de las primeras cosas
One
que
of the
hicimos es
main things
el
that
tema
we
de la
did
subtitulación automática, que
was
es un poco
automatic
lo que estáis viendo
subtitles, and
ahí.
that's what you're
Una
seeing
persona
here
o un
now. A
sistema,
person
bueno,
or a
antes se
system.
hacía
It
con
used to
las
be
personas,
done
¿no?
with
Pero
people,
un sistema
but
que
a
permita
system whereby
transcribir
you
automáticamente
there you
los
have
contenidos
automatic transcription
audiovisuales, no
of
solo para
audiovisuals,
personas
not
con
only for
discapacidad
people
auditiva,
with hearing
sino también para
problems, but
personas que
also for people
temporalmente nos
who
volvemos sordos. Por
temporarily
ejemplo, si estamos en
are
una gran
deaf. For example,
exposición,
if you're in a big
hay mucho
exhibition
ruido
and
de
there's a
fondo,
lot of
pues lo
noise,
normal es que leamos en
we
vez de
would
que oigamos
tend to
probablemente
read rather than really
un
listen
vídeo,
because
¿no?
there's so much noise to try
Para
to listen to a video, for
alguna
example.
experiencia
And
curiosa,
so we had an
lo que hemos
interesting
realizado con el
experience
portal de gobierno abierto del
with
gobierno
the
vasco,
open government
de
and
modo
the
que les
Basque
hemos
government,
ayudado en
and
una
we've helped
herramienta que
them
les
with a
permite
tool
reducir a
whereby
un
they can
tercio el
reduce by
tiempo que
1/3
tardaban
the
en doblar
time
los contenidos audiovisuales,
to
con lo cual esta
dub
accesibilidad puede
different
llegar a todos.
different videos. That's really
Esto hay
helped
que
with
decirlo en un
accessibility.
entorno
This was
multilingüe, muy
done in a
importante, porque las
multi-language
personas
environment
hablamos
because
diferentes
we speak
idiomas.
different languages,
Nosotros vivimos
and
en Euskadi, en
we
una
live in the
comunidad
Basque
en la
country
que
in
el
a
euskera y el castellano
community
son lenguas cooficiales,
where Basque
con lo cual tenemos que tener también en
and
cuenta este tema, sobre
Spanish
todo
are
respecto a la
co-official
ciudadanía.
languages.
Y también respecto al
And
turismo,
also in
incluso
terms
en
of
un tercer idioma, que
tourism,
es el
in a
francés,
third
podemos
language, in
estar menos de
French,
20 kilómetros de la
we
frontera
live
con el
20
sur de
kilometers
Francia,
from
con lo
the
cual tenemos muchas
border with France. So
excursionistas
we
que
have a
vienen a
lot
pasar
of
el día
tourists that
a
come in to
nuestro
spend the
territorio
day
y a los
in the
cuales
Basque
también
country.
tenemos que
And
atender.
we also have to serve those
Hablando
tourists.
del tema de la
Now,
voz,
talking about
también
voice,
estamos desarrollando
we're
chatbots
developing
que nos
chat
permitan esa
boxes
interacción más
where we have
amigable.
this
Los
more
chatbots son herramientas
tourist-friendly
que bueno, nos van
interaction.
ayudando
And
en
these
ese
are
proceso de
helping us in
interacción,
the
principalmente
interaction,
con una
mainly
tecnología de un
using
dispositivo móvil, una
a
página web.
mobile device or a
En el
web
mundo de
page.
los viajes están ya
And
bastante
in
extendidos,
the
pero
travel
realmente
world, these are
todavía
quite
queda mucha
extended, but there's
investigación
still a
para
lot
que
of
esos
research to
sistemas
be
de
done
diálogo
in
sean
different
amigables
dialect
y
systems,
realmente
user-friendly
no sean
dialect systems,
basados en reglas,
not
de modo que
based
podamos
on
tener una
rules, where
conversación
you can really have
natural
a natural
con esos chatbots
conversation
y
with
que
the
nos
chat box,
ayuden
and
pues,
that
en ese
these
proceso
can
pues, de
help us in
reserva
this
o de
process of
cesión de
making
cierta
reservations
información.
or getting
Y
information.
finalmente, en el tema de
Also,
interacción con voz,
in
no podemos
interaction,
olvidar el tema de los call centers, un tema que también
voice
es muy
interaction, we have call
importante
centers. That's
para
another big
muchas
issue
empresas,
for many
ya no
companies.
solo para el
It's
destino,
not
sino
just
para,
for
por
the
ejemplo, los
destination, but
hoteles, los
also for
restaurantes
hotels,
u otro
restaurants,
tipo de,
and or in
vamos a
other
decir, organizaciones dentro de
types
ese
of
ecosistema
services in
turístico. Si
that tourist
entendemos el destino
ecosystem.
como esa colaboración
So we have that
público-privada,
public-private collaboration that would come in here.
esas posibilidades
So
de
these
automatizar
possibilities
esos
to
procesos de call
automate
center
call center
nos también da mucha
processes
flexibilidad
gives quite a bit of
pues, a las
flexibility
propias organizaciones
to
y
the
también al
organizations
usuario, ¿no?
and
Que
also
se
to
siente
users.
escuchado
They
y
feel
entendido
listened to and
y el
understood
sistema pues, de la
by
forma mejor posible.
a system in the best way possible.
Estos son un poco las
So
cosas
these
que
are
que
just a
hemos
few
trabajado en
of
el
the
tema
things
de
that we've
voz.
worked on in terms of voice. Now, I think voice is going to continue to be more and more important. And since the beginning of our activity, we were working with augmented reality and getting additional information along the lines of what Eugene said in certain environments for guiding systems or for obtaining additional information about things that we're seeing. These technologies can be used on mobile devices and for broadcast, and we can see, for example, in a race where the runners are superimposed and you can distinguish the different runners, the route they've taken, and you've probably seen this in football and media pro, but we can do this with all types of content, a tennis match or a horse race, using these technologies to democratize these sports, and it's a value added to make all of these things more accessible and understandable. And these content in traditional sports, at least in the best country, we have some local sports also. I would also like to talk about the new forms of mobility, like the autonomous car, which is going to really evolutionize mobility at destinations, not so much in urban areas, but in the interurban trips. This concept of tourist destination, which could be an intelligent destination, we need intelligent forms of communication as well. And we talk a lot about the last mile and so forth in tourist destinations, but it's also true that where we think it's going to have the biggest impact is in interurban trips, so the tourists can move from these most popular destinations. For example, I live in San Sebastian, moving from San Sebastian towards the towards other parts of the coast or the interior part of the country, and they can move autonomously. So this mobility between different territories is important, and the autonomous car, we think, will strike a difference in terms of the future of mobility in tourist destinations. And to make this accessible, of course, not only for people with functional diversity, but also people with temporary limitations or other types of people who need or don't like to drive. And this would be an added value for the destination. So these are a few things we've done, Adolfo, with our work.
La verdad, María, que es muy variado, ¿no? Y luego me gusta, ¿no? El concepto este de que muchas veces
I like this concept
personas que no
that you
tenemos esa
mentioned.
limitación, pues temporalmente sí la tenemos, ¿no?
People
Y es verdad.
don't usually have limitations may temporarily have them.
Lo
And
sufrimos de vez en cuando, ¿no?
it is
También
so.
somos
We
conscientes
often
precisamente
suffer these limitations, and
¿no? En nuestra
thus
vida,
we become more aware of them.
y podemos desarrollar este tipo de actividades.
And we can develop this type of activities. Thank you very much.
Que,
We're going to
bueno,
move on
dentro
to
del clúster tiene
Daniel,
muchísimos
who
ejemplos
within the cluster
que,
has
bueno,
plenty of
pues,
examples. I hope he can
Bueno,
show us
pues
some of
muchas
them.
gracias, Adolfo, y la
Thank you
verdad
very much,
es
Adolfo.
que con estos compañeros de mesa
With all of
me
this
gusta que cuenten
colleagues, it's going to be very difficult for me to
maravillosos, ¿no? Y que nos dan pues, un montón de ilusión y
offer
ganas de seguir siguiendo este tema.
anything else wonderful, because it fills us with excitement and to keep working on this topic. At the beginning, regarding the explanation, we had to talk about before the cluster as a representation of the industry. It's focused not so much into being a technological lobby, but rather to become an organization that seeks the better name of the industry for good, sustainable, reasonable projects, not only in terms of sustainability or financial investment, but projects that have a meaning. Projects that are purposeful, that have an real impact on the citizens, on our citizens' life quality. This is something that is irrevocably linked to the concept of accessibility. We are not only talking about disability. There are many different types of disabilities. Some may be permanent or temporary. For instance, someone who has a baby and has to push a stroller has certain accessibility needs that once the child can walk on their own disappear, or someone who has a cast on their legs can have a certain type of need, or if they're walking on crutches. That's the case for all of our designs. We have a history of collaboration with ANCE Foundation. We started speaking several summers ago. We came to talk to them. We thought we had all of these new things that we wanted to show them. We're going to show you all of this smart city things. We're full of innovation. And they tell, are they accessible? And we said, well, of course they are. We're very state of the art, of course. Show us. Well, we send them a comprehensive list of solutions, and after 1 week, they replied, not even one of them complies with the accessibility requirements. So that made us become much more humble than we were before. Not only accessibility, it wasn't not only that accessibility wasn't taken into account, but that when it was taken into account, it wasn't being done well. They weren't fulfilling the proper definition for accessibility. So we decided to start this path where we wanted to do to create this cluster. We would like to highlight something which is the ability to send out a call to the whole sector when solving different challenges for places that host smart city solutions. It can be destinations, communities, anywhere where there's a solution for smart living. These places are closely linked to the concept of tourist destination, not only for the concept of user, but also for the conditioning of the tourists that they might have in their destination. So all of this needs to be compatible and live in harmony with other people who live there. We started launching these challenges to the whole sector, and we realized we were having a certain degree of success. We first created an accessible system for the management of turns, for taking turns. We realized there were people who couldn't reach the machine to give out the number for following a queue, or a tactile screen that wasn't accessible either. So we need to define, to clarify the rightful definition of accessibility. So we decided to update all of the designs we had in mind that we had previously thought that were right, to update them with everything they needed. The second challenge was the accessible transformation of an ATM to provide self-service for the finalization of a certain bureaucratic task. It was a citizen ATM. The third challenge was a system for home care that had to be accessible. This is currently in development. All of these were done in collaboration with members of the cluster. The ANCE Foundation has a privileged position with a general overview. And in the end, they're capable of having this collaboration to find the right partner who is in the best position to work on this project. The best possible solution. This could be further, we could talk a lot about this, but I think it's better to leave it here. Thank you very much, Daniel. We have a few questions from the audience, so we're going to begin with them. You can answer these questions freely if they're not posed for someone in particular. Do you have accepted validators in your projects? I think everyone can answer this question. In which way are these projects validated? Yes, when we do the projects, we always have a validation project. It's a phase in which, a stage in which we make sure that everything works in a controlled environment. Then we go into a second stage where the research group, our colleagues that haven't worked actively on the project, a third person for them to validate, and then we reach this third stage that is a clinical trial. We always work with these studies of multiple pathologies, so we take the target population, anyone, could be someone with a certain auditory disability or a visual disability. We try to find a proper sample size of the population to be able to validate the technology. This is a process that takes time, of course. To be able to test any type of technology in people, we need to go through an ethics committee. They need to approve our procedure. Once they okay our technology, whether it's mature enough, whether it's safe for the participants in the study, and then finally we can perform the study. It's usually the final stage of the project itself. I understand that, Maria, you might have something different depending on the technology. You may need an ethics committee or not. In our case, we not only validate our projects, we co-design what are the needs. We sometimes don't reach the final user because they're usually an intermediary company. In the case of the Basque government, they wanted to try on their website. They say it's a beta version, so there could be several errors that need to be solved. Regarding the self-driving car, we can still drive. These cars cannot be driven in a space. So whenever we can, we'll try them out. I don't know if you would like to add anything else.
Bueno, por nuestra parte, en estos retos que hemos
Well,
comentado
on our behalf, these challenges that we just mentioned,
concebidos desde el inicio
they are conceived from the beginning in collaboration with the ONCE Foundation.
La validación es una fase, digamos, transversal.
So validation is a
El proceso de diseño y de bueno, pues de desarrollo y
it has to do with the whole process, with the whole design, development, and implementing of the project in general. So I think this can be completed. Mariano, if you don't want to take part in this, I have another question specifically for you. Shoot me. They ask, I think anyone can answer this, but I think it has to do with you. In what way do local governments in these two processes in what way do you take into account real accessibility in your daily practice when focusing on these projects for smart cities? Well, I think this has a lot to do with the epilogue you gave to my small intervention. I would like to thank Vitura and Batur to take into account the access of accessibility as a pillar within the definition of a smart tourist destination. This facilitates things for us when explaining the needs of a destination in order to launch this type of performance. Whether it's with the technician or the politician. It wasn't as simple before it was standardized within the government to be able to incorporate this type of activities. Before that, we had this smart tourist destination. Now it's much easier to explain the accessibility issue. It's easier now to walk towards this transformation into fully accessible. Each one can do depending on their abilities. The biggest conflict we find is being aware of the need to have a destination for all. Because this for all not only implies placing ramps on the streets, because often it's thought that you only need to solve mobility issues, but we have auditory issues, visual issues, psychological. There are a whole series of parameters that need to be taken into account. Thanks. And due to this new model, it's much easier to do it.
Bueno, perdón, sí.
Yes, sorry.
¿Ahora me oís bien?
Can you hear me?
Bueno, pues por nuestra parte,
Adolfo, estás en mute, Adolfo.
Es que Adolfo está silenciado y como lo veo ahí moviendo...
Perdón, Daniel.
Adolfo is muted. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Perfecto, gracias. En el caso del clúster, pues nos encontramos con que tenemos...
In the case of the cluster, we have one of our partners is AENOR, who is closely linked to the standard itself. They provide us an orientation. We began with the city of Granada in our initial process to build its path towards certification within the defined access together with accessibility, technology, and innovation. We have this access of accessibility as an irreplaceable requisite.
Ahí permanentemente contemplado.
It's permanently taken into account, and
Correcto.
that's what we do in every project that we begin.
No, no sé si.
No queréis intervenir con este
Anna,
tema.
no, you didn't want to say anything on this topic. Lots of people are talking about the autonomous, the self-driving car. This is something that's probably very expensive. Another type of things regarding mobility. What type of technology do you think are really useful and are readily available to improve mobility?
Bueno, supongo que la pregunta va contra mí.
I guess
así
the
que,
question goes against me. So,
a ver, un vehículo
well,
autónomo no tiene por qué ser caro.
a self-driving car needn't be expensive. It's a car. In the end, there are several types of self-driving vehicles. Those who are purposefully done for them, and then we have regular vehicles that can be hacked into being self-driving. Many of our current cars have a certain degree of autonomy. Right now, our problem is regulatory. I guess everyone is horrified when they read the self-driving car in the US that is running people over. Well, Americans like to launch things and then have them learn on their own. Self-driving car needs to know when they need to brake and when they need to stop. That's the American way. European way is much more conservative. So we won't have a self-driving car in Europe until the Germans, who are the leading authority in this, are sure that there are not going to be any problems, that no one is going to be killed by a self-driving car. So how long we have for the self-driving car, I don't know. Is it more expensive? No, it doesn't have to. Technology, the chips are evolving really fast. I can only say that we need to place all those algorithms in a chip that is not more expensive than 10 cents of a euro. So the problem is not technology, the problem is rather regulatory. Thank you. I think this is an excellent response to the question. Another question is related to accessibility within workplace. Do you think there are people with disabilities who could be working in the tourist sector of the smart city? And if you think so, what are their facilities? What will be needed for its development? Sorry. Well, tourist offices that we work with usually, we find all kinds of people with different kinds of limitations, and they're fully integrated into their workplace. We don't think that we need any special conditioning. We are in Alicante. There's a network of tourist offices that work homogeneously. All of them need to fulfill a certain requirements to be fully accessible. In any context, we can find people with disabilities working with us. If anyone else would like to contribute to this question. There are several questions related to this topic. The participation of people with disabilities.
ahí es fundamental intentar tener esa visión
It is vital to have this practical view.
o con una institución como puede ser la ONCE para que te oriente y te guíe, pero
If you have foundations such as OFIT to be able to provide you with inspiration in these intersectorial groups, meetings, and committees, it is key to have experts of the very same municipality to allow them to transfer this practical perspective on how things should work.
El resto de participantes, pues al no necesitarla, al no tener esa necesidad, para la redundancia, no tiene la percepción.
Hemos perdido, ¿verdad?
Sí, Mariano. Mariano, ¿me oye?
Mariano, can you hear me? Yes, I was frozen. Yeah, you went away.
Ha sido breve, ha sido breve.
It was very brief.
Si te parece, a continuar con otras preguntas para que intervengan también más miembros de la mesa.
We're going to follow up with other questions so that the other members of the panel can respond. For the technological sectors and for the companies that are members of the cluster, what are the technologies that we should need to promote? Which are the most important ones?
Ya vemos las dificultades, ¿no? De poner una tecnología a disposición de todo el mundo. Decirnos así brevemente, con un poco de visión de futuro.
Can you tell us about them briefly?
Aquí probablemente, bueno, en el sector del turismo y accesibilidad María tendrá más.
The sector of tourism and accessibility, I'm sure Maria will have more information than us.
La miniaturización de la electrónica, como he dicho antes.
For instance, these wearables, this new technology that is miniature, that has this really small size, it's an accessible and affordable technology. It's rather cheap.
Y bueno, en mi opinión, yo creo que eso, por su facilidad
I think because of its ease of adaptability, of including it in museums, tourist offices, this type of small or cheap technology, such as mobile technologies, anything that is easy and fast. It's not a big infrastructure, such as a car or a helicopter. This is still to come. I think small things that generate a big change, such as simultaneous translation. These are the things that are going to be easier to have working. Yes, I fully agree with everything that has been said. I think many of the topics will be fractioned by the silver economy. For instance, the voice aspect is very reasonable. It's easy. We all need to hear and understand everything that has to do with automatic translation, transcription, dialogue systems. If this same thing we needed to do it by chat, half of the audience will be bored. Automatic translation, I think there's a lot of work that has already been done. I think guidance systems are still facing some issues. and anything we can think of that makes our life easier.
Y luego también quisiera resaltar el tema de, estamos hablando del usuario, pero también hay que hablar del back office, ¿no? De cómo
We're talking about the user, but we also need to talk about back office.
Para diferentes colectivos, incluso para la gente que tiene diversidad funcional, ¿no?
For different groups, for people with functional diversity, with sustainable, with smart destinations, how to take the smart decisions for those groups of users with special needs. Well, fortunately, we've run out of time. If you would like to ask something else really quickly.
Más que por la última tecnología de vanguardia, aprovechando nuestra condición de clúster, casi diría que es algo más organizativo.
I think this has more to do with organization, with the augmented reality technology. It's already there. An emergency system. For instance, if someone needs to use an elevator and it's out of service for a day, they need to receive a notification for that beforehand, so that the information that is not readily available but is not being used for accessibility. Thank you, all of you, for your interventions. I hope the audience learned something new today. Thank you very much for the ONCE Foundation and to everyone that made this possible today. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Adolfo. We cannot find a better way to put an end to the institutional part of our Congress than with a positive perspective on tourism. But we're going to finish our session today with something more playful, such as video games. We're going to bring several players together where disability is not a handicap. Will be able to take place in a very interesting